it appears to me. White House confirmed today to various news organizations, the NBC News report, that he plans to write a book. We'll see about that, but that's what the White House aides are saying. Also on Joe Biden, New York Times story published a little while ago. 4 top reporters byline. And if you look at the headline, put up the headline, please, you'll see it purports to be about this extraordinary story, one of the great stories and most outrageous developments in my career, and I think in American history, how Biden's inner circle protected a faltering president. Okay, that suggests perhaps the New York Times is finally going to get into the game, which the Wall Street Journal has been in, to say the decade-long cover-up of his decline of mental acuity, almost a decade, and the media's role in that. Incredible story, right? A very long story, 4 powerhouse bylines, extremely disappointing. They do what the New York Times has done almost, with a few exceptions, which I'll get to, almost throughout this controversy, this collusion, this conspiracy, which is they print the claims of Biden aides and Biden friends as if they're true. And there's so many examples of the public displays of loss of mental acuity they don't even mention. And what they do, again, if you read the whole thing in its totality, what they're accepting is he got tired because he traveled too much. He is physically declined, so he looked older. That it was a political problem rather than a medical problem, and that in some high-profile instances, like on foreign trips and at the debate, the problem was he was traveling too much and he was tired. But that in the main, he was exceptionally on top of everything. The story ends with an anecdote from a guy who was his aide in the 70s, who said he visited him at the White House and watched Biden edit a speech and tell people what edits he wanted. And it was like being back in the beginning of his career, hasn't lost a step. There's a few new anecdotes about people confronting him about his decline or confronting aides about his decline. Again, I say with respect, because I think the New York Times is, despite all its flaws, one of the great institutions in the country. This story is an embarrassment, and the senior editors of the paper should have killed it and said to the reporters, this story is just going to reinforce the perception that we were part of the cover-up, that we're not interested in getting to the bottom of this, because as I said, they didn't even report stuff that's on the public record. Okay, couple things from the story. They say in one paragraph, White House aides chastise White House correspondents for coverage of the president's age. That's true, they did, and it's a big part of the cover-up. They try to intimidate any reporter who would talk about this to write about it. Just putting that sentence in without specifics, because I can tell you it happened to New York Times reporters. They may say, well, these attempts to chastise us or these chastisements were off the record. I wouldn't take that off the record. I wouldn't take being chastised about this off the record. So here's the paragraph that kills me. It just infuriates me, because this is so important for history and for accountability. This should never happen again. Should never have an emperor's new clothes conspiracy between an administration of either party and the press corps. So they run through that. They say that the efforts to shield him were about the fact that he got cranky or he was demanding or he was tired, not about shielding him from being exposed as having lost mental acuity. There's nothing in the story. Again, there's so many things not in the story about his doctors. There's nothing in the story about how could he not have been tested for Parkinson's. They say, well, he didn't test for Parkinson's. How could they not? When anyone who's got a relative that has Parkinson's looked at him and said, seems like he's got Parkinson's. Okay. So here's the paragraph. They run through the concerns some foreign leaders had about his mental acuity and his state of mind on some international travel. Taken together, these factors affected how Mr. Biden was scheduled and took a toll on his energy levels as he campaigned, people close to him said. So again, they're back to he just got tired because he worked so hard. He remained focused and in command in internal meetings, aides said. Okay, how can you write that sentence? It's just not true. It just, sometimes, yes, he was in command and focus, but anyway. But according to some, they also took to telling one another when it was a, quote, bad day, meaning that Mr. Biden's mood led to some meetings or calls being reshuffled to a better time. Other officials said it was because Mr. Biden was busy. The whole thing infuriates me, just really does.